Democratic Minnesota state representatives were assassinated.
By a left-wing lunatic.
No, not by a left-wing lunatic. And so I do think that, I think the point everybody...
And we all, so am I, sir.
I mean, look at the school shooter in Minnesota. What are the facts in that case?
You apparently don't even recognize the facts around the assassination of the state legislatures.
Look at the fact. Let's start with the alligator. And he's right for blaming the left, because just look at the facts. The facts are the school shooter in Minnesota was a left-wing lunatic. The facts are the school shooter in Tennessee was a left-wing lunatic. So instead of blaming one another,
it is happening. It is happening. And the fish runs from the head down.
That. But I think the problem is you, sir, as a congressman, just singled out leftist attacks.
Also referring to the political left as radical lunatics.
He was at the U.S. Open. He was at UFC.
Both sides
the
of his
president
mouth.
has been very
and
active.
Since his election in 2016, the political rhetoric in this country has devolved further.
I think the president is bringing us together. The fact that we forget it's 9/11. We forget it's the Memorial Day of 9/11. And where was the president? He was at Yankee Stadium today, shaking hands.
Hello, everybody. Guys, this panel really pissed me off. We will never resolve anything with this kind of talk. Check this out. I caution you, it will very likely piss you off too. Let's get into this segment and we'll talk about it.
Tonight, Donald Trump puts the blame to the political left for Charlie Kirk's assassination, even as the manhunt for his killer continues.
Are you concerned for your own safety?
Not really. I'm really concerned for our country. We have a great country. We have a radical left group of lunatics out there, just absolute lunatics, and we're going to get that problem solved. I'm only concerned for the country. Yeah.
As we were just discussing, that is a narrative that really kind of leans into the divide that now we know from the governor of Utah, foreign entities are really interested in exploiting. But for President Trump, it's not surprising. But in this moment, it feels like pouring gasoline on the fire in a way.
It is. I think Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, has tried to set the right tone, where we need to look to the better angels of our nature. We need to remember that we are not enemies, but friends. We're in a dangerous place as a country. Political violence is rising. And President Trump has a responsibility to the office to try to unite rather than divide. And when he puts the focus solely on the left, after pardoning the January 6th folks, for example, you get an asymmetry that's more likely to encourage violence than to tamp it down. We need to stop this. Political violence is always unacceptable, and we're in a dangerous place as a country. We need to wake up.
Congressman, there were so many tensions on the Hill this week over this, and it really just showed there's a lack of trust, there's a lot of anger, and there's understandable anger and sadness, especially from your conservative colleagues. I don't know if you've been on the Hill earlier today, or I mean, is that improving any, or is it still as tense as it seems?
Well, one, you got to understand that Congress is a microcosm of the United States, right? So there's a lot of tension within the United States. I would argue that the president is right here, and he's right for blaming the left, because just look at the facts. The facts are the school shooter in Minnesota was a left-wing lunatic. The facts are the school shooter in Tennessee was a left-wing lunatic. So these shooters are more and more becoming these radical leftists. So when the president says that, he's not wrong. I can guarantee you this. President Trump is going to hunt down and find the killer of Charlie Kirk. And if he's not dead already, he's going to bring him to justice. And we should all be rooting for him, because this has rocked the foundation of our republic. When you don't have First Amendment rights, regardless of if somebody's left-leaning or right-leaning, it absolutely destroys the fabric of our nation.
I just want to note, though, I mean, you cannot omit, just a couple months ago, Democratic Minnesota state representatives were assassinated.
By a left-wing lunatic.
No, not by a left-wing lunatic. And so I do think that I think the point everybody is trying to make is that if we want to get to the bottom of violence, political violence, division, and hatred that leads to violence, that might lead to retribution if this is not handled properly, don't we have an obligation to talk to all of us, not just to talk to one part of the country?
I think that's what you saw tonight, right?
Before I let this piece of garbage talk, guys, this is so ridiculous. You can look this up yourself right now. The Cato Institute had a study on this. Maybe I'll just put it up right here somewhere. I'll remember whatever, the 4-minute mark. More than twice the amount of politically motivated terrorism was committed by the right wing. Oh, what a surprise. Not the party that was chanting, Jews will not replace us, and the party that stormed the Capitol January 6th. That resulted in multiple officers passing away. They seem so nice and warm. Who would have thought that? Oh, and by the way, Trump, the crime president, pardoned those violent rioters, including the Proud Little Boys. But no worries there by the conservatives, huh? Crime is so important.
The reason why we had this press conference was to put everybody's eyes to find this killer, right? And needed everybody, regardless of who was tuning in or not. The sooner we find this murderer, the better this country is. And if we don't find it, it'll be at a detriment to everybody.
Sure.
Congressman, with all due respect, this country is hungry for leaders. And you are an elected member of Congress, and no one's been apprehended yet. I understand what you're saying about political violence, and there has been political violence perpetrated by individuals who identify as on the left. But there's also been political violence perpetrated by those who are clearly on the right, as the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband makes abundantly clear. Please, I am begging you, lead the country from your position of power and try to bring the temperature down. I knew Charlie Kirk personally.
Right.
Charlie Kirk and I disagreed on almost every political issue.
Mm-hmm.
But what I appreciated about Charlie Kirk is he provided a platform for people like me to speak to a completely different audience and make my case. And I appreciated that about him, and I would like it if members of Congress, both on the left and right, found a way to harbor those types of conversations, both on the House floor, the Senate floor, and also on shows like this.
Well, first off, if anybody is murdering, if anybody is using political rhetoric and using political violence to silence their people that they don't agree with, we should all be against that. We should all push towards curbing that. Not just elected officials, but everyday individuals should also push for that. And part of that is we got to hold one another responsible and accountable. We can't just say, oh, it was somebody else's fault. All of us play a role in this. And look, I think the president is bringing us together. The fact that, you know, we forget it's 9/11. We forget it's the Memorial Day of 9/11. And where was the president? He was at Yankee Stadium today, shaking hands, bringing life to it. I'm not a Yankees fan, but you see that picture with him and all the Yankees baseball players.
He was also referring to the political left as radical lunatics.
He was at the U.S. Open.
He
was at
speaks from
UFC.
both sides
the
of his
president
mouth.
has been very active,
and since his election in 2016, the political rhetoric in this country has devolved further.
Can I ask you to respond to that part?
These people, this is why nothing will get resolved. These people are cultists. These people, Republican Party, they only care about themselves. If you really cared about these issues here, you would acknowledge Trump spawned all these little sick minions that saw that they could get rich behaving similarly to Trump and speaking as disgustingly about people. They saw it was profitable, popular. They got addicted. This is how we got here. And we got congressmen like him refuse to call out the Republicans. They refuse to call out Trump. And this is why this is getting worse and worse. Trump has all the blood on his hands. Obviously not all of it, the killer, obviously. But you know what I mean. And you know who else has blood in their hands? All those who knew what they were doing and spewing hate and did it anyways because it meant getting rich. You think anybody on the right would change from this? Look at this jackass. Of course not. They are blinded by hate, cruelty, fame, wealth. And again, is it okay for Charlie to get killed? Of course not. I'm not barbaric to believe such a thing. It's disgusting and vile what happened to him. But one can have logic and understand and be truthful as to how we got here, no? If you're serious about fixing this divide and this issue we have in our country, you have to be brutally honest as to what's happening here.
Of what she's addressing, which is what the president said. I saw someone say this this week, when you hear people, usually online, say they did this, they did that, when we're talking about one man who is a lunatic shooter, criminal, that is so discordant to a lot of this country who is they're just normal people who are appalled by this. But when you generalize an awful event like this to a whole half of the country, as President Trump seemed to have done today, you're saying that that's bringing the country together, but a lot of people don't hear that.
What I'm saying is, sadly, there isn't just one incident. This isn't just on a decline. This is a more and more regular occurrence of where there is more and more political rhetoric that is turned into political violence, and somebody is not here. And that somebody today, or this week, is Charlie Kirk. Who is it going to be next?
Look at
Trump.
Trump.
And the way we curve that out is not by just saying this isn't happening. It's by us going, there is a systemic issue that is happening in our country. And instead of blaming one another,
it is happening. It is happening. And the fish rots from the head down.
That. But I think the problem is you, sir, as a congressman, just singled out leftist attacks. And that, of course, leaves out things like the attack on the CDC just a few weeks ago. It leaves out lots of other attacks. I think the point is, particularly in your position of responsibility, particularly on a day like 9/11, there's an obligation not to try to get political points, but to look at the broader cycle and to say we all need to step up. And we all, so am I, sir.
I mean, look at the school shooter in Minnesota. What are the facts in that case?
You apparently don't even recognize the facts around the assassination of the state legislatures.
Look at the facts. Let's start with the alligator nearest to the boat, which was the Minnesota school shooting, right? And what I'm getting at is these aren't just one issue.
No, it's all
growing.
connected.
They're
that
expanding.
is exactly
They're
right.
all
That's
over the
why
country.
when you, particularly as a member of Congress, focus on one political side, echoing that.
I just said there's no room for any political rhetoric.
That is
I just said there's no
keep
room
in
for
mind on
any
9/11.
political rhetoric that turns into political violence.
100%
left,
agree.
right. It doesn't matter.
Let me just take one.
Let me
just take 1 second here.
And like, this is part of the problem, is that this is how right wingers are. He's a congressman and refuses to acknowledge, again, the Cato Institute, more than double these terrorist attacks, these political violence attacks have been by right wingers. This is part of the issue why we will never get it resolved. And the left are not aggressive and direct enough. They're conflating and mixing two different aspects. I've seen this multiple times online, even by Ana Kasparian. Yes, there was times that he would just have a normal debate. She just said it there earlier, that he would be open to debate and having conversation, I guess, if you would call it that, with someone, fine. But then he would also say things like, let me see here, where is the list? Gay people should be stoned to death. God's perfect law. I mean, I'm sorry, where's the debate in that? Where's the effing debate in that? Is anyone going to mention that here? Most people are scared when they see a black pilot flying the plane. Where's the debate in that? This is just spewing hate. The guy who hit, I have a couple here. The guy who hit Pelosi's husband on the head with a hammer should be bailed out. MLK Jr. was an awful person. George Floyd had it coming. The January 6th rioters didn't. This is the things that he said. Civil Rights Act was a huge mistake. Women's natural place is in a husband's control. Gun deaths are acceptable as long as we get to keep our guns, essentially, right? 1,000 people, about 1,000 people a day die from gun violence. But you want me to care about someone who said these things?
We were talking about being in the arena of public life. Every single one of you, myself included, we're all here talking about politics. And now increasingly, that is becoming something that makes people afraid. I want to play what Senator Kevin Cramer said about what the mood is on Capitol Hill among his colleagues about this issue.
I was thinking yesterday, trying to drive out of the Capitol, off the plaza, you've got 1,000 people working their way on foot, and we're very, very accessible. I like being accessible, but being accessible is starting to look like being vulnerable. And, so I think there's a lot of us that are concerned about that.
Being accessible is starting to look vulnerable. Do you feel that way? Are you concerned about your own safety?
I am concerned, and so are a lot of my colleagues that are concerned. But this is how you defeat evil. This is how you defeat terrorists. This is how you defeat people that try to change our way of life, is you go right at them. This Saturday, guess what? We're having a campaign event. There'll be hundreds of people there in San Antonio. We are not going to back down. We're not going to be shy. We're not going to be silent. We're going to be vocal. And I think everyone should be that, whether it's a liberal view on the world or whether it's a conservative view on the world. We need to get back to having dialogue. And these people that are using political violence as their solution, they need to be the outliers, not the mainstream. And part of that is us being, the world has changed though, Abby. I mean, I'll give you a prime example. Why weren't there drones at this event? If there was one drone in the air, it would completely change our view on things. I mentioned that because I'm a cryptologist.
You mean like a video
a physical drone. If you put one drone in the air, all of a sudden, every rooftop is covered. I mentioned that because this isn't the first time there's been a shooter from a rooftop. I want it to be the last time. So let's incorporate the technology into solving some of these problems, not just blaming one another for how we got here.
There are a lot of questions about that. I mean, including just there were only 6 officers there, plus some private security. But the future is going to look very different for these types of events. I want you to all stand by for us. We have much more.
It's the same thing with every issue with right wings. Just throw more police officers, throw more technology. Like, how about you figure out why the pipe burst in the first place instead of just mopping it up? Figure out why it burst in the first place, or it's just going to keep happening again. Guys, and this is the problem, the right-wingers will come on TV and all these little podcasters and just effing lie. And then left-wingers are just too weak. They're too scared to be direct. I saw a big left-wing YouTuber say, you know, Charlie Kirk was a really nice person behind closed doors. And I thought to myself, what the hell does that matter? Obviously, the person who does this doesn't give a F how he was behind closed doors. It's all about the things that he says very publicly and proudly. The constant demonizing of groups of people that already have it hard, man. Did he have empathy or sympathy? No, he didn't. He kept going on and on because he got rich. He didn't care, just like all these other right-wingers spewing hate and cruelty. They all know who they are. Like some of these things, like he was just having an open space for debate. Where is the debate in some of the things that he was saying? And what I would love to ask the panel is, do you think others were harmed by anything Charlie said, who was listened by millions? Do you think that he caused harm to anyone at all? That's just one of the countless vile, sick things he has said, or just a few that I mentioned there. From one conservative. Where is the debate when you say most people are scared when you see a black pilot flying a plane? You're just being a effing bigot, disgusting racist, and having your followers believe in this disgusting ideology. I mean, Laura Loomer said all Hispanics, undocumented or not, should be fed to effing alligators. Where is the debate in something like that? Why is that not brought up here? Like, shut the F up. I'm not going to act like all of a sudden Charlie wasn't actually that bad. He made space for debate. F that. He was evil. And we all know it. Did he deserve to die? Of course not. When humans are no God. And no one is deaf here. You shouldn't be allowed to decide who gets to die and who gets to live. But if you aren't going to be aggressively honest with a subject, you will never get to the source of the issue. What's next? You'll say that we should be empathetic when Trump passes on, right? Right. Let's see about that. Guys, I just want to say one more thing. I mentioned this 1,000 times, and I know I'm ranting here. I grew up in literally the roughest, most dangerous parts of the Bronx. You know how I survived? It was actually pretty simple. I kept my head down, mind my own business, and was respectful and kind to everyone I came across, no matter what their background was or skin color. Conservatives out there, I didn't treat them differently because their skin color was different, was a different skin color. You understand that? And of course, you still may be a victim, but I can assure you the likelihood of you becoming a victim, if you're kind and respectful to others, will drastically drop. Like, just cut the crap. I'm going to leave it there, guys. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments. Please leave a like, subscribe. It really helps the channel, really helps spread the message out there. and I'll catch you in the next one.